Welcome to a weekly Wizardly Review. Every week we select works or content from the DM's Guild to review. This is where we break them down and see how it all fits together, and then we evaluate them based on a few points. So we go by lore, difficulty in implementation, balance, and intrigue. Finally, we'll be topping off with some personal opinions that won't be factored into our 10-star rating. So, I'm going to hand it over to you to bring us into this one.
Okay, fair enough. Alright, so without further ado, today we're going to be reviewing both Sidekick Essentials and Droop's Monster Manual of Sidekicks by Paul Metzger, as you can see to either side of us. So we had to review both of these products back to back because, as you'll see, they are designed to complement each other and should be looked at as an overarching work that seeks to educate, guide, and provide research in regards to sidekicks for use in D&D 5th edition. So we're going to be starting off with our lore section.
All right, so first question goes to you, Eric. Is there character and or item lore?
By all the gods of the realms, yes, in droves. Paul has laid out a comprehensive yet non-exhausting amount of work surrounding sidekicks. Most heavily in Droop's Monster Manual of Sidekicks, each and every sidekick comes equipped with beautiful backstory, plot hooks, and unique personal traits that pack flavor into any table. James, what did you think?
You know what, Eric, to give a little bit more on the Sidekick Essentials side of things, Paul has also given us a succinct and easy to understand recap of the official rules for sidekicks, how to craft your own sidekick, and he brings new sidekick archetypes and personalities that can be used to match with any stat block you create. As a DM, this is the kind of versatility and use I want to have out of a supplement. Something that guides me on how to create my own epic lore and sidekicks and gives me all the tools to do it as well. Honestly, it's fantastic. Eric?
Okay. Yeah, so my question for you then is there locational lore?
Well, actually, I was really happy and surprised to see that there is. In Droop's Monster Manual of Sidekicks, close to half of the sidekicks are based on named and unnamed monsters that appear in the official published 5e adventures and their locations. But Paul ultimately leaves it up to the DM to have the final say as to where, how a sidekick is introduced or comes from. What about you, Eric?
Okay. James, I think you honestly nailed it right on the head for this one, like right out of the park. The only note that I'll add is that Paul adds enough critical information in the sidekicks' personalities. What I mean by this is their bonds, their ideals, their flaws, so that a DM can easily dream up how to bring them into a campaign at almost any setting or location. And I just think I'd discuss that maybe like a little bit further, but I don't feel like I really need to. James?
You know what? I'll ask you, is there an overall plot?
I gotta say not for this. Like, as we mentioned at the beginning, it's a guide on how to use, level, and create sidekicks. In the Sidekick Essentials and then in Droop's Monster Manual of Sidekicks, it's bringing some pre-rendered sidekicks for a DM to use in their campaigns or pre-written modules. So that doesn't really apply here. James?
You know what? 10-4 rubber ducky. Nothing to mention here. Eric, back to you.
Okay. So how would you say the adventure hooks are in this, James?
Okay. Well, let me gather my thoughts here. Well, you know what? There are hooks for the sidekicks provided in the Monster Manual of Sidekicks, and I think they could have been fleshed out a bit more for newer DMs to make it even more easier to use and making the work essentially foolproof. But that's more of kind of a personal gripe and something more for the difficulty section, I think. What about you, Eric?
Honestly, 110% agree with you, James. With these two supplements, your imagination should be bursting. And you even have resources to start using the sidekicks right away if you're not ready to make your own custom one yet. James?
Okay, so my question to you, does it have any tie-offs or loose ends?
Okay, well, this is one of those tough questions again for us. Like, similar to the previous question, it doesn't quite fit into our objective criteria, but I would say that the ultimate goals and the fate of the sidekicks are open-ended, or as we would classify them, loose ends.
Yeah.
But rightfully so, in my opinion, because the events and what happens to those sidekicks, it's up to the DM and the table to determine that.
You know what? Bingo. And onward.
Okay, alrighty. So this is a dumb question for you, James.
Okay.
But does this fit into pre-established D&D lore?
Well, Eric, honestly, that's ultimately the objective of these two works. It's built to support and build upon and develop the D&D 5e sidekick idea and mechanic. And it makes a more fleshed out, accessible, and easy to use product at your table. Keep in mind, these are brand new rules that were released in the Essentials kit in September, and they really needed refinement, and I think that's what we all got from these two supplements. Eric?
Like, you killed it, bud. Honestly, like 100 million gazillion %. Like, wholeheartedly agree. It's meant to be used in all of D&D 5e settings and materials, and it fits right into the barrel of the lore of D&D, harkening back to the good old days of henchmen and followers. So that's going to just bring us, I think, to our final star rating for the lore section. I'm going to go ahead and say a 9.5 out of 10. James, how about you?
You know what? I love how we're always on the same wavelength here. I also want to give it a 9.5 out of 10. It was really well-rounded with some of the character and archetype lore, and just how you can introduce these people into your campaigns. And I know that was kind of a small point of contention we had, which is kind of the small 0.5 that we took away from it, which was it missed some of the easy things, like, oh yeah, you go out, you fight a monster, you get knocked unconscious, a little bit of a railroady thing, but you wake up and that's where your sidekick is. They wake you up and they help you back on your feet, and that was kind of the one little negative nit prick.
Yeah.
But we did have to factor it in for our score.
110%. So exactly what James was saying, just, a little example to just spark DMs in terms of how they can potentially bring somebody in. And then just for me as well, for that half a point, is just that there was a little bit of inconsistencies on the different sidekicks. Some of them had a little bit more fleshed out lore than others, but at the bare minimum, like ones that had a little bit less effort, it is still more than serviceable.
Yeah.
But just because of this, and again, nitpick kind of thing to do, but objectively speaking, why we couldn't give it a solid 10 out of 10. But 9.5,
that's
out of the park, sincerely. So that's going to conclude our lore section for this one. So we will see you guys here shortly. Alrighty, so moving into our difficulty section. So James, first question. How was the study that was required for a DM?
I would say honestly very minimal. However, it would take you maybe an hour or two to familiarize yourself with the rules laid out in the Essentials kit. But Paul recaps them in the Sidekick Essentials, and then knowing how to level up your sidekick as well as how to play them and what sort of personalities they have and how that comes out in gameplay. This is all a decent amount of time, but when looking at the other duties a DM has to do, it's very streamlined, enjoyable, and easy to do. Eric?
100%. Once again, I'm with you all the way on this one, James. The first 2 to 3 pages of Sidekicks Essentials will get you fully up to speed and equipped to be able to build and play your first sidekick. So yes, there are some finer things that you want to keep in mind. There's some onus on the player or DM who is running the sidekick to keep track of, but I think it wouldn't be too hard. I can talk more about that, but I just don't feel like I need to. James?
Okay, my question to you is how much study was needed for players?
Okay, that also depends. If a player is running a sidekick instead of the DM, then they would need to likewise invest the same amount of time on top of their usual duties of running their character. James, what did you think?
You know what? Precisely. It's either an extra few hours and a little extra time at the table, or their lives are virtually unaffected as the DM continues to try to not lose their mind under the weight of the thousands of things that they have to keep track of. I'm not bitter.
So, James, were there or should there have been charts or tables, DM or player guidelines?
Oh, hell yeah. There's tables for every Sidekick and Droops monster manual, and appropriate charts and tables for all the archetypes, and Sidekick leveling guide in the Sidekick Essentials is all very well laid out, easy to read, no complaints from me here at all. What about you, Eric?
I like the simplistic nature of it all. Like, honestly, like the tables, the charts, they really made the reader feel confident. Like, as I read through it, I had this sensation that no matter what, I was going to be prepared to run a Sidekick as a DM or a player. And I could easily see what they could do at any time. Far easier than a character sheet is because of just the layout that it has. So, James?
You know what? That brings us to our next question. What is the level of in-game difficulty?
Okay, well, I guess just running the Sidekick character alongside the NPCs or your own character, depending on how it was assigned. But I found it very manageable. How about you, James?
You know what, Eric? You hit this nail on the head, and it's meant to be streamlined and easy, and Paul didn't overcomplicate things. If it's not broke, don't fix it. I think he really did a good job of just polishing these rules and making it even easier for a table to implement. And you know, I could elaborate, but I think it's really self-explanatory. So, Eric?
Alright, so how would you say integrating this into a pre-existing campaign or world would be?
Oh, extremely easy. Eric, I mean, this is what we needed at our table when we started our intrepid two-person narrative campaign. And this is such a huge space to be filled for content. It is a legitimate way the game, or to play the game, and I'm so happy there are finally resources that are starting to come out that support and cater to this style of playing. Eric?
Honestly, I completely feel your passion on this one, James. I think as long as everyone at the table is on board with the concept and willing to accept the responsibility of playing with sidekicks, then agreed. It is as seamless as introducing like a major campaign NPC. Yeah, James?
Okay. One of our favorite questions to go over is who or what is this geared towards, and how does it mesh with group types?
For sure. So, well, James, typically this is geared towards a table with less than 4 players, and that's including the DM, as a way to soar up the lack of power of having less players at the table, and it allows for even a single GM and single player to play through all the written D&D 5e adventure campaign and modules, or just their one-shots. So anybody can use this. That's what I thought. How about you?
You know what? I agree. I would just add that this is the first thing we have reviewed that isn't geared more readily towards solely RP players. Sidekicks is as versatile as the game itself, and they allow for you and the GM and a single player to go on a narrative deep dive and explore some intense topics and emotion, or allows that same group to play a siege defense one-shot where it's kill or be killed. Eric?
Yeah, finally. Like, yeah, I agree. Last question is, what would you say the payoff in-game versus out-of-game was that?
Honestly, Eric, I think this payoff comes with a lot more to say. I'd like to leave it for just after our star review so we can kind of get ahead with things.
Perfectly fair. Absolutely. Alrighty, James, then, yeah, we'll leave that for the end. What would you say the difficulty rating scores for us on our Wizardly rating?
You know what? This one really takes the cake with a solid 10 out of 10 from me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, James. As surprising as it is, this is the first time a product that we've reviewed has ever scored a perfect score in the difficulty section for us, because in terms of implementing it at a table, it is not difficult at all. And Paul went through such lengths to, it's one of those really tough things to be able to strike. That sort of, when you're creating it, that sort of a balance, where something is simple to understand, simple to pick up, but doesn't feel utterly bare bones, or that it's utterly lacking in areas that it has everything that you need to be able to create and run your sidekicks, which that's what it's geared for. And it also explains to you like the theory behind sidekicks and how it's used by the official rules. So I mean, I don't like, yeah.
No, absolutely. Okay, so when it comes to the payoff in-game when working with sidekicks or just having NPCs in a group, so I played this one campaign where we had a DM NPC that was just super overpowered in certain regards, mainly because of a broken magic item back in 4th edition. It was like this orb made a successful hit on everything once a day or something like that. But depending on how your DM is running this NPC, or how you're running this NPC sidekick, it can contrast with the group or mesh really, really well. So this one, objectively, I'd say I couldn't factor in for scoring because it's so based on many variables.
Right.
And I didn't think there was enough factual-based stuff that would detract from the rating.
Gotcha. I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. The only thing that I'd add on top of that is that like this is why it didn't factor into the objective criteria, because we're not sure, like, at every table is different, so we're not sure what is the skill level at every table. I mean, if unfortunately, like, there might be an instance where a DM is just not fully prepared, able to do it, or understand how to do it properly, and they're not able to run the sidekick properly and introduce it properly. Vice versa, if the responsibility was given to the player and it's a first time player, just as all of us have had issues and made mistakes, playing our first characters in any edition, let alone just D&D,
exactly.
right? Like, it's a completely different beast. So but still, when it comes to an objective criteria of, like, could Paul, like, in that sense, like, Paul has created a material that, in theory, absolutely, a new DM with a new player could use these supplements along with the Essentials kit that came out that has sidekicks introduced and has, the story is streamlined and suited to actually be run that way. That, in theory, someone even at that level should be able to understand, build, and create and implement their sidekicks even better than what was originally created. And that's why objectively it scored as high as it did. That's all I would say.
Absolutely. And so just to bring us into that final score, I just want to cap that one off by saying you should be able to plug and play. Now, just in the event that someone tries to pick it up, plug and play, and it doesn't pan out for them, doesn't mean that they're not skilled. It just means that they might need to take a different approach at certain things.
Correct, exactly.
And that's why this is so versatile, and I recommend this for every DM's toolkit. Hands down. So, to our star rating.
Yeah, exactly. 10 out of 10, like we mentioned before, for difficulty. It's a no-brainer. Absolutely. Just couldn't agree more, and we'll see you guys soon.
All right. So, we're here in balance, and my first question is to you, Eric. Is the lore balanced within the work itself?
Okay. Well, James, I gotta say that this is one of the times that I might be caught, like, God, it's happening without words. I think it's balanced in the sense that the amount of space and time that's used for the lore is in balance with the stat block and the leveling table. James.
To reiterate things we've already said, this is designed to integrate into worldly, pre-established lore, and does so flawlessly. Paul did a wonderful job blending characters and stories into an easy plug-and-play module. Eric?
Alright, so then how was the combat or the non-combat situations balanced? So, like traps, things like that.
So based on the stat blocks and archetypes developed and utilized in these guides, I'd say it was well balanced and given a great amount of love and care. Balancing for non-combat situations can be difficult. In this case, I feel that we can't fairly or objectively factor in the non-combat situations, as these are players to a degree, but overall, awesome. Eric, your thoughts?
Yeah, I have to agree with what you said. I like that. I think that the stats were very well balanced for combat. They don't overpower the sidekicks, and neither are they underwhelming. Some of the powers are derived from familiar abilities found in player classes, but there are some special kind of unique abilities in Droop's monster manual that make me want to play every damn one of them once in a death arena just to see them all in action, man. Like,
no, absolutely. Okay, so my next question for you is: were the mechanics or fights, encounters, all that stuff, was it balanced?
Well, I believe it depends on the encounters a sidekick and the player character face and how a DM sets those all up. It's really difficult. It's a difficult question to objectively answer when it's completely reliant on other variables that are undetermined. James, do you want to help me out?
Honestly, this is the first time we've encountered this issue where our questions or criteria cannot really be applied to the work. We've talked about how we would approach these sorts of situations with a NA or non-applicable score to maintain an objective and fair point of view, and I think that kind of fits in here.
Yeah, I agree. So that just leads me to, is the reward in-game, is that difficulty ratio appropriate?
Putting it simply, yes. I think my unbridled praise will come out a little bit later, but back to you.
Okay, gotcha. All right, 110%, it's a no-brainer. 2 pages. 2 pages, guys! Lock and load. 2 words. Is there a correlation? You tell me! You tell me! I think we're good here, guys.
Okay.
What would you give our star rating for balance on this?
Oh boy, star rating for balance. I have to give it a solid 9 out of 10. Altogether, factoring in the NA we had just a few minutes ago, altogether, this is a really well-balanced piece of work.
Yeah.
And I know we were going to mention a little bit later, but there is another guide that has recently come out at the time of filming.
Correct.
That helps level these sidekicks up to 20th level.
100%.
And yep. I'll let you elaborate on that more later, but, just how he's made all of these characters and the stat blocks so carefully that it's not like having an entire other player that has a vast utility belt. These guys are kind of more focused but still versatile.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. They're so streamlined, and for most of them, they all fit on one single page.
Oh yes.
The versatility and the utility that comes with that. It just makes it's a simple concept, and it was meant to be simple, and this just allows that. I mean, it just allows that. It just...
No, absolutely.
Yeah, it just gives you good sidekicks that you can use.
No, exactly. And the last thing I'd like to add is that I noticed this from a DM point of view. Sometimes fighting monsters, they don't have the same abilities a player could have.
Correct.
This, if you were so inclined, like you mentioned with the Death Arena, you could literally take these NPCs at face value and go, okay, this guy is going to be my bad guy.
Yeah.
And now your players have to fight an actual player character kind of level creature.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think why, at the end of the day, after all this, why it got docked a mark is just because of that not leeway, but that, there's some undetermined variables that could affect whether a particular sidekick would be balanced or not. And again, with some of the inconsistencies on the lore side of things, that also plays into balance, because remember, that's the 4 kind of pillars that all lean on each other when we're talking about balance. So naturally, that's where it lost this point for me. And I think what you mentioned as well, again, with there being an NA criteria in there, that just means that there was some things that we were not able to quantify just because that's the nature of the work itself. So, yeah.
You know what? And you know what? That is going to bring us into our intrigue and player draw section. All right. So here we are in intrigue and player draw. I'm going to fire off the first question towards you. What about this product caught your eye?
Well, James, shit, I'm gonna start sounding like a broken record in this section. But I loved the artwork. I did. The covers are a little bit more unassuming, but within, like, the artwork is perfectly placed. The layout is so easy on the eyes, and it makes it simple to use. Mind you, some of the artwork is recycled from the free-to-use packs from the stock art, but they're used perfectly and thematically. Okay, and so just for me, it's streamlined and visually balanced. James?
You know what? For me, the fact is that I would have loved to have had this product years ago while I ran some campaigns, ran a campaign for some friends. But honestly, like you said, the visual artwork, it's very pleasing, and everything flows together really, really well. Finally, over to you.
Okay, when looking through the product information, what told you that this was right for your table?
Like I just mentioned, everything, honestly. Its versatility is an absolute must. Even if you have a full group, this could be used as an easy jumpstart for some story essential NPCs.
All right, I couldn't agree more with you, James. The idea of sidekicks is phenomenal, and this takes that and goes the extra mile that's needed to make this an integral part of how we all run D&D. Just go check it out. Like, it's fully visible, the preview, so you can see all of it. Graciously, Paul has done that for all of his work. So there's no reason to not go check this out at the very least. I would highly recommend absolutely going out and buying this. So, but before we launch into that, I guess just what is our wizardly rating for intrigue and player draw? I gave it a 9.5 out of 10.
You know what? I also have to give it a 9.5 out of 10. Absolutely. Yeah. The way everything works together, like you said, visually, artwork-wise, once again, great job to all the artists that worked on this, the editor, and to Paul himself for having the vision of this product. Amazing work. Absolutely phenomenal.
I couldn't agree more, especially like with how it's laid out. That lends to how easy it is to use and then thus implement at your table. And that is why it scored so highly for me, is not necessarily just the fact that there was fantastic art. You know, like I said, a lot of it is from the free stock art, but again, it's a good example of how to use that to good effect, to bolster your work, give some good visual aids of this sidekicks that you are talking about, to give visual aids to the people that are going to be using them and running them. And like I said, it doesn't detract from the work, it only adds to it, bolsters it, and like I said, it actually makes it easier to use for its intended purpose, which is why it scored so highly for me. The only reason why I took off half a mark really is just because I guess that there is less original artwork, and that is absolutely a nitpick, because the thing is, like, you don't really need it to create something that's really good. And like I said, hats off to you, Paul, for making full previews, so that people can absolutely look at the entirety of these documents. And I think that takes a lot of nuts as a creator to just put your work out there for, you know, because there definitely are bad people that will try and pirate stuff. Yeah, but I think, you know, this is something all of us should be using. It has a place on every DM's shelf, so that's why we gave it a 9.5 out of 10 for intrigue. James, this brings us to our final closing remarks, our final wizardly review for both the Sidekick Essentials and Droop's Monster Manual of Sidekicks as an overarching work, like we mentioned at the very beginning of this video. James, what do the wizards give this?
The Wizards give this a solid 9.5 out of 10.
Aggregate score. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just amazing work. Truly it is. It's a tool that I think every DM should have, even if they don't plan on using sidekicks, because like I said, you can copy and paste some of these characters to use as bad guys, or to just take
simple
their
NPCs even.
Exactly, or to just take their personalities, so you don't always have to go, all right, I'll give this guy a bit of an action over here, I've got to write this down. No, you just go, okay, It's a kobold.
Absolutely,
Right?
couldn't agree more. And if you wanted to use certain sidekicks for certain adventure modules that you're running, like I said, half of these sidekicks come from the pre-written modules. And so if you want to be like really like rules as written, sort of a DM, and no, I'm only going to use what's provided, right? Then
This will fit right up your alley.
110%. Or, you know, you can take these cool characters outside of those adventuring modules, and like especially with the new thing that Paul has released, you can take these guys all the way to level 20.
Absolutely.
So, you know, you like that one Aarakocra from Princess of the Apocalypse, and he survived the whole ordeal with you, and guess what? You know, you could ask him, yo man, like, you want to come back with us and like be a part of this adventuring family that we've created? Absolutely, you can do that. I just think it's just great. And like you said, James, he's created sidekicks that are just so versatile, full of flavor. Yeah, I mean, like for me, just on a personal note, not factoring into this final score, but like, yeah, this is just something that should be on everyone's shelf, because this should be made official. Wizards of the Coast, if you're listening to me, this should be made official and added in with your essentials kit, because this really streamlines that perfect idea that you guys did have and craft, which is having sidekicks and making the game that much more open to more people. Because
Absolutely.
even if there's just one DM and a player, now there's a way to legitimately be able to balance and play and flesh out that story as it was intended to be. So even two people can experience the Curse of Strahd. Even two people can experience, and the list goes on and on and on. So yeah.
Exactly. Now, before we go rambling off too far, to bring this to a close, I'd like to point out something that we had noticed and you had brought up, is that from May 4th to May 17th, the DMs Guild is giving 100% royalties to the creators. Now, why do we mention this? Because this is the time where I think all of us as a community should be supporting one another, and definitely to the people like Paul and so many other creators on the DMs Guild, popular ones, new ones, everyone.
All the ones that we've covered so far on our channel.
Exactly. Go check them out, and if you can find it within you, and if you're able to, send them a few bucks, buy the work, add it to your repertoire. It is well worth it.
Absolutely. And between, like we said, May 4th to May 17th, because that is where you can really support the creators that you enjoy their work, and that support is going to really
bolster the community.
Yeah, and it's going to have just more impact on a lot of creators' lives, especially the creators who do this as a full-time job. You know, the times that we're living in are tough, and this is the opportunity to, as they say themselves, play it forward.
Exactly.
Also, James and I were having just a good time and a real heart-to-heart there. Totally forgot. The links to all this is in the descriptions below, as usual, so where you can find the amazing works by Paul, links down below, as well as the links to all of our social media, so you can reach out and get in contact with us and support us on our Patreon, so that we can continue to keep doing this awesome Wizardly Review stuff. Alright guys, so again, without further ado, we will see you
through the rift.